Gun rights in the USSR was not the ideal workers' paradise that we would all have hoped for. It was not perfect, but it's not what the right wing claims it to be. No, not all workers had permanent armament, but not all guns were confiscated either. The ownership of guns was restrictive by the type of weapon. Hunting rifles and shotguns were, for the most part, available to most Soviet citizens. Hunting was a very common pastime and means of work for those living out in rural areas of the Soviet Union, and they never had meaningful attempt at confiscating their weaponry. Those living in more urban areas and on the collectivized farms faced stricter rules on gun ownership. Only double-barreled and smooth-bore shotguns were commonly owned in those areas. Those with history in either the military, police, or another job with high-grade weapon training were allowed a higher caliber of weapons, but even that was limited. In certain situations, these restrictions on higher caliber weapons were lifted. When the German forces invaded the Soviet Union, the NKVD began to spread military-styled, high-caliber weapons to Soviet citizens living under German occupation. The Soviet citizens were able to use these military weapons to defend themselves against these fascist soldiers, and when the war hit its turning point, most of these weapons remained in the citizens' hands. Part of the reason that the Soviet citizens were able to use military weapons with large success was due to the training and weaponry that all Soviet citizens received. While they were not able to own a large variety of guns, they were certainly trained to use many different types. Training in how to use pistols, shotguns, rifle, and assault weapons was in Soviet schools, Soviet factories, and various groups such as the Komsomol, a communist-styled youth organization. Soviet citizens could go to firing ranges to practice their aim and practice with new and different weapons. While the workers were not permanently armed or armed in a capacity in a way to properly maintain the dictatorship of the proletariat, obviously, they were certainly armed and trained on how to use weapons to defend themselves should the need arise.